Marvelous Marvin Hagler versus Oscar Golden Boy De La Hoya, going out to Xavier Gomez. Let's get into it. De La Hoya is known for having speed, hand speed, one of the best left hooks, great counter puncher, and great combination punching. De La Hoya is known to have stamina issues in the later rounds, and he tended to be flat-footed. Marvin Hagler was one of the greatest southpaws in the history of the sport, if not the greatest southpaw. He had a granite chin, durability, stamina, and his biggest advantage is that he was simply Marvin Hagler. Marvin Hagler could let his emotions get the best of him sometimes and could get thrown off of his game plan. They're both great fighters who fought in two of the best eras in boxing. Imagine this fight taking place at middleweight, where Marvin Hagler was a career middleweight, but Oscar wasn't his best in this division. Now, I could see Oscar outworking Marvin early on in the fight, but as the fight progresses, I could see Marvin Hagler slowly walking him down, tiring him out, and setting him up for a late stoppage. So I'm going with Marvin Hagler by late stoppage. Let me know what you think. Boxing fans are totally backwards these days. There's things that I've noticed, and I'm sure that everyone has noticed. Some can't bring themselves to admit the truth for whatever reason, and that's okay. And we're right back on this inactivity thing. And we're going to be on this thing for a while, let me tell you. There's a lot of videos I'm going to make addressing this issue, and I'm going to continue to address it as long as it's an issue. I mean, why have a problem that you can't talk about or that you can't address? Because if no one addresses the issue, then no one will even think of a solution to the problem. And this inactivity is a big problem in the sport. Now, whether we admit it now or admit it later, we're going to admit it. We're going to admit it. And the issue that I have is we give more credit to inactive fighters than we do active fighters. You can have fighters who are active, who are risking their precious O to challenge themselves, to make the biggest fights and the best fights they can possibly make. While we have inactive fighters who are holding on to their O for dear life, and we romanticize those guys based on what we haven't seen and based on what we don't know. And so check this out. We judge an active fighter based on what we know, while we praise an inactive fighter based on what we don't know. What kind of sense does that make? And so we can have someone who's fighting more than once a year, who's taking on all the challenges. They can have a bad night. They can struggle in a fight. That fighter is nothing. And yes, I'm referring to Loma, and other fighters like Loma. But you have fighters like Jamal Charlo and Demetrius Andrade, to where we're praising these guys. And these guys are the best thing since sliced bread. But neither one of these guys have been tested. We haven't seen them in there against the best. But these are the boogeymen of their division. What kind of sense does that make? So why can't we give the guys who are actually fighting more than once a year, who are taking on the challenges, who are taking all the risk. They're not concerned so much with a silly undefeated record, but these guys are weak. These guys are undefeated. These guys are overrated in their hype jobs. But these guys over here who only fight once a year, if you're lucky, their only concern is padding their records, looking for a meal ticket, or sitting around waiting for that meal ticket. They're not even trying to challenge themselves, but they claim everyone is ducking them. And now, of course, I don't know everything, but I don't see why everyone is ducking these guys, or why they would be ducking these guys. Once again, help me make sense of this. Help me make sense of this. So it goes back to my point of romanticizing undefeated records, romanticizing undefeated fighters. Because it's easy to remain undefeated when you're barely fighting, and when you're not fighting the top guys of your division and then claiming everyone is ducking you. So we give credit based on things we don't know and things we don't see, and we judge based on things we know and see. Because one thing I guarantee is that if these other guys who you put on a pedestal, if they were fighting more than once a year on a regular basis, if they were fighting twice a year for the next 3 years, they would have a loss or two on their records. And so once again, it's easy to remain undefeated when you're barely fighting. It's easy to remain undefeated when your only objective is to pad your record. You're handpicking every last opponent, and you're waiting on that meal ticket. And when you're waiting on that meal ticket, it's easy to create this narrative that everyone is ducking you. No one wants to fight you. And so you can sit back and you can receive all this credit from these naive fans. And they bought into this narrative that you can't get a fight. No one wants to fight you. You can't get your big break. No one will give you a chance. So you can sit on that undefeated record while gaining fans these days. It makes absolutely no sense to me. You know how anyone would buy into this. Well, if you just started watching boxing about 5 years ago, okay, I get it. But if you're like me and you've been watching boxing since 1989 and you're buying into this, shame on you, to tell you the truth. Shame on you. So why not give credit where credit is due? Why not praise the guys who are taking the risk, who are putting their lives on the line, of course, as all fighters do, who are putting their records on the line, who are putting their reputations on the line to make the best fights. They're fighting more than once a year. Why not get behind those guys? Why not reverse it? Why not hold these guys accountable who are barely fighting, who are barely doing anything but sitting around and creating this narrative that they can't get a fight, creating this narrative that no one will give them a chance? Why not fight each other? Why hasn't Andre and Charlo fought yet? There's no excuse for it. Why aren't these guys trying to fight Benavidez? There's no excuse for it. And Paul Williams, for example, and Winky Wright, who happen to fight each other at some point in their career. What I liked about these guys is no one really wanted to fight these guys. High risk, low reward. I get it. It makes sense. I'm not even judging. But these guys were fighting on a regular basis, and they earned their big shots. They earned it. They forced the issue by fighting regularly, and fighting the best available opponents. That's the way you do it. I don't care what era you're in. That's the way you do it, not sitting around and creating a narrative that no one wants to fight you. You can't get the big fights, but you're not even trying to fight each other, and you're not even trying to fight the best available opposition. Longtime fans like me sees through it. You can fool these casuals, and unfortunately, the casuals are running the sport right now. I hope that changes soon. It really needs to, for the sake of the sport. It really does. So, we are romanticizing inactive fighters, because if they were active, we would see the truth. We'd see them as imperfect fighters, and we wouldn't be making them out to be the boogeymen that we are. Andre is a boogeyman. Jamal Charlo is a boogeyman. David Benavidez is a boogeyman, but these guys are barely fighting, and they won't even fight each other. So how in the world are they boogeymen? I'm just trying to give you something to think about. I come in peace here, but just really think about this. The guys who are trying, we trash those guys. Oh, he got a loss. He lost once, twice, 3 times. Oh, he looked weak in his last fight, or he looked rusty. While we romanticize these guys that we haven't seen in over a year, we romanticize inactive fighters. You know it, and I know it. Please give me your thoughts on this. I would really love to hear them.
If you like the channel, please share, promote, and subscribe. I would really appreciate it.